Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy Story Number 1, The Victory, written by Shogun CDN. Captain Reyes looked over to his comm officer, Phillips, who shook his head slowly. The entire bridge was eerily silent. 90 bodies filled the cavernous nerve center of the UEA Victory-class cruiser, Shepherd. Yet, it was as if the room was filled with mannequins. The air was stifled by the tension. "Lieutenant Ada," Captain Reyes said, staring ahead at the view screen showing the green-grey planet below. "Send it."
"Aye, sending,"
came the response from Ada, and the ship rocked slightly as the thump of the main railgun accelerated its 500-kilogram hardened titanium payload towards the planet at over 5,000 meters per second. A bright orange bloom lit up the surface where the projectile hit. In a blink, over 100,000 lives were erased. Around them in space, the wreckage of hundreds of ships, humans, and their allies and Drosh littered the darkness. The remnants of what was supposed to be the final battle in a long war. Most were broken and dead, some still spouting flames as they died. Earth and her alien allies had won, and the Drosh had been beaten back, and countless systems had been freed from enslavement. The planetary Drosh government could do nothing but surrender. But the Drosh were as violent and intractable in defeat as they were in victory. The same belief in their own superiority over every other species now fueled their resistance. The Alliance had won the war, but despite their numerical advantage, it had come at a great cost. Now here, on the doorstep of victory, their foe would not surrender, even in the face of certain defeat. Earth's entry into the galactic community was supposed to have been a joyous moment for humanity. Instead, it plunged the humans into a 50-year war that they were not ready for. It had exhausted their resources, and at times, it seemed, almost driven them to the point of extinction. The UEA had nothing left except for a few dozen ships. Earth and Mars were her only surviving worlds. There were not even enough soldiers left for a protracted ground battle. Orbital bombardment was the only option to force the surrender of the Drosh, and yet they would not. The Shepherd had been in orbit over the planet for almost 16 hours, smashing the planet with ordnance launched at subluminal speeds, while its sister ships patrolled Drosh space, destroying any stragglers. Most capital ships were either dead or dying, and the role of bringing the Drosh to heel had been given to Shepherd, as she had the largest gun remaining in the fleet. Millions upon millions on the planet had died or were dying, their cities being smashed to rubble, and still the Drosh to find them. Minutes passed after the last shot, and as the timer ran down, Captain Reyes looked again at Phillips, who could barely move his head. "Lieutenant Ida, send it," came the command. He had lost track of how many times he'd given that order that day, and the thump did not come, however. Captain Shepherd looked over to his weapons officer. Her shoulders were slumped, and she was trembling. "Lieutenant Ida," Reyes repeated, "send it." Tears began to fall down Ida's face silently. Other staff who had noted that it was going on also began to weep, as though a dam had burst. Reyes moved from his command post to the weapons chamber. He placed a hand on Ida's shoulder. "You are dismissed, Lieutenant," he said gently. Lieutenant Ida looked up at him. I'm sorry, sir. There's just so many. What are we doing? You have nothing to be ashamed of. Leave your post. That's an order," he replied, helping her out of the chair. He then turned towards his crew. "That goes for everyone else here who feels the same way. You will not be reprimanded in any manner if you feel that you cannot perform your duties, but I cannot have you on the bridge." Slowly, some of the crew began to leave their posts. He waited silently as the crew members filed past him. Most stopped to try and offer an apology. Some could only look at him mournfully. When the exodus stopped, only about 60 remained. "As you were," Reyes said. The Exer made a move to the weapons chamber, but Reyes waved him off and sat down in the chair. This was rightfully his responsibility, he thought to himself. Then he keyed in the firing sequence. "Sending!" With a push, he sent 100,000 or so more drosh to their deaths. Men, women, children, old, sick, helpless. They had long ago run out of military targets and were now targeting population centers. The Prime could surely see the bodies and smell the death. Why won't they cede? Reyes asked himself. He pleaded silently with them to put an end to this. It was several more hours until Phillips finally held up his hand. The Prime was surrendering. Captain Reyes removed his hand from the fire control and gripped the table to stop them from shaking. The Shepherd's ammunition stores had been nearly depleted. The planet below was marked by hundreds of fires visible even from space. Its atmosphere was dark with ash and dust. By now, only about a dozen crew remained on the bridge, including the officer from the Hoth. The chameleon-like creature glowed a bright orange.
"It is done, Captain. We have won. The drosh will no longer foul our planets. We have achieved something great today,"
the Hoth said excitedly. Captain Reyes simply stood up, made his way to the exit. "You have the bridge," he said to the Hoth.
"Sir, I don't understand. We have won, haven't we?"
the Hoth asked, as the captain's form disappeared into the corridor. End of story. Story number 2. No, really, I'm an evil genius. Seriously. Written by Apophis Pegasus. I am a terrible, evil genius. Don't let the throne and the sinister lad and the long black cloak fool you. I suck at the gig. Now, I know it is not something to be ashamed of, usually, but what do you do when your childhood dreams are dashed? Want to know the worst part? It's not even the genius part that I'm bad at. It's the evil. Who in the hell can be bad at being evil, I ask you? Apparently, this guy. You see, it all started when I was a wee lad tinkering around with Legos and trying to build ray guns out of my parents' microwave. Like many involved loving parents, they asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I, being full of youthful innocence and having a decent sociopathic streak, gleefully replied, "Conqueror of Afghanistan." And right there, my parents should have taken me to a psychologist and had me checked out. Tell me that conquering countries is not a nice thing to do. Yes, annexing did count. I wasn't Russia. And to focus my interest more on productive matters like cooking a Pop-Tart from across the room. Instead, they raised their eyebrows, shrugged and chuckled. "Oh, that was a good joke, kiddo." And then they got me a 15 9-volt batteries for my railgun, and it was all downhill from there. Growing up, I was a pretty big loner. Kept to myself, read a lot, tinkered about in the science lab, like any disenfranchised future supervillain should. But instead of being bullied or ostracized, my peers were nice. No heads down the toilet, no stolen lunch money. Sure, there may have been a mild teasing from a couple choice people, but on the whole, they were decent. Now the teachers, oh, they were worse. They were supportive. I wanted to build a robot, sure. I wanted to make a pocket fusion reactor and go right ahead. Just use the furthest lab from the students and have the fire extinguisher ready. Oh, for the love of heaven! I told them I wanted to bioengineer a dragon. They asked if there was anything that they could do to help. School time made up some of my fondest childhood memories. It was terrible. University was even worse. There, my dastardly exploits weren't just supported, but encouraged. Built my first droid army there. Boss walked past my college days. I was knowledgeable and armed with funds from my selling of certain inventions. Turns out some countries really like droid infantry. Who knew? Mucked about for a couple years building up my forces. created a super serum in case I ever needed to get physical, and at the now tender age of 30, I set out on my childhood goal, turning Afghanistan into my own personal playground. And I did it too. Took me a week, a business week at that. Saturday morning, I was sipping a Coke, swinging my legs off the roof of the National Assembly building. Then I rebuilt Kabul. Don't give me that look. It was messy, dust everywhere, and quite frankly, its urban planning left much to be desired. If I was going to be the overlord of a country, I was going to be an overlord of a clean and well-organized one. And the battle droids were great for manual labor. So Kabul rebuilt, took me a month, moved on to the surrounding areas, built those back up too, better than before. Then I moved on to the surrounding villages and remote areas, built some roads while I was at it, and some better hospitals. So, Afghanistan rebuilt, all nice and shiny. Time to rule. So I reinstated the president, then the Afghan parliament. Do you know how much time and effort it takes to run a country, especially one the size of Afghanistan? I needed help, and they weren't bad sorts, really, except for the corrupt ones. When I found out, remote brain scanners are great. They got to jail. So I messed around there for a while, doing experiments, asking my minions to do stuff demanding seemed uncouth. You know, the usual. Locals seemed to like me for some reason. Probably because I kept the Caliban in check. But then I got the bloodlust again. So I invaded Iran. This took me a shorter amount of time to set up my standards, but it was still a fun thing to do. But much like Afghanistan, the old wandering stall stirred again, so I went after Iraq. And Kazakhstan. And Kyrgyzstan. And Pakistan. That one was a bit touchy. And, India. More touchy. Mongolia, and the entirety of the West and South Asia. By then, I'd systemized the whole shebang, and could get relief efforts up and running in less than a day. So, a couple of years of becoming one of the undisputed powers of the planet, people started getting itchy trigger fingers. End of story. I just want to quickly thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Alithia, Barky, Trygan95, Beautycure, Meridian117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholt, Jordan Bucksborn, Angry Marine, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa, and Arcadian. Thank you very much. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.